All right.
Sweet.
I'm here, so I'm gonna be a little over towering you
Yeah,
with
I'm
my
like,
seat
huh.
cushion. I have like a 3-inch seat cushion here, guys. I'm like that much taller than him. I'm here with Porangui, or OAI, right? As we learned
Uh-huh.
today, or a few days ago. We just finished the Music is Medicine retreat.
Yeah.
It was a totally beautiful experience. I've been following you for a couple years, and I met Sydney, my girlfriend, at your show in San Francisco a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And my audience is always asking me about these bracelets. I got
Okay.
these bracelets from him.
Sakapa.
San Kappa, yeah. And so thank you for this beautiful retreat. I wanted to introduce you to my audience
Yeah.
and just talk flow. I don't have an agenda, just talk whatever comes up. So if you want to just introduce yourself and what you're about, and we'll move forward from there.
Yeah. So my name's Porangui, and I'm originally from Brazil by way of Mexico in the southwest here, Arizona, Sedona, where we find ourselves now. And I'm about life. I'm about music. I'm about creating beauty in the world. That's really my passion. Is how do we make the world more beautiful than we found it? How do we make our life more beautiful than we've received it? How do we make the hearts of others and our relationships more beautiful than we found them as well? And so bringing that beauty through in all the possible mediums, whether that be through music, whether that be through dance, whether that be through, the work that we do, whether it be through technology, whatever the thing is, how do we bring beauty in all those things? And that's really where I find it's my North Star. It always tells me, like, is this thing gonna enrich life or not? And then that's how I know if it's a yes or no. Yeah.
How did it all start for you, like the spiritual journey?
How did it all start? I mean, I guess it started with, my family, my mother and my father. Both of them are pretty spiritual beings. As an understatement, but they're very deep in their own paths, and they really modeled that for me. Fortunately, as a kid, not in a like dogmatic way, but just as in listen, show up, make things more beautiful than you find them. That was one of the biggest lessons my father ever taught me. That was one of the early lessons I got and was reinforced throughout my upbringing. And then in that, as far as the spiritual path, it's never ends. It's an ongoing process. My mother went through many different lineages. She was kind of a seeker, I guess you could say, and was always wanting to learn more and deepen herself. And me, I had no choice. I had to tag along with that. And so as a result, I kind of got a lot of influences, a lot of teaching, a lot of things that came into my life, and other teachers from an early age. And then my father as well, in his own way. And so between them, that kind of like started it, I guess I would say, is where it really began. And then for me, what really kind of brought it into a sharp focus has been my experience in my relationship to music, and music as a spiritual medium, I guess, for lack of another way to say it. Spirit, for me, is a form of vibration. We talk about spirit, people talk about spirits or ghosts or whatever you want to call them, in different traditions, different cultures. And sometimes people get kind of into a fear base around it, where it's like, oh, that's like, there's evil spirits and there's good spirits and all this stuff. And, I think I kind of take it back another step rather than getting into that duality of it, and just talk about vibration. And I can only speak to that because it's been my direct experience in life, has been vibration. And like, when there's a negative vibration going on, like you feel it, like it's a sensation, it arises, and you can kind of like the hairs go up on the back of your neck, and you can feel something's not quite right. And my intuition, my gut, will cue me into that, And so then it's like an awareness, and then the ability to respond, responsibility for me is then how do I conduct myself with that energy, And the converse is true. There can be an energy in a space or in a place or in a sound that makes some other hairs rise, and you get those goosebumps and those tingles, and it's like this amazing feeling. And same thing, it's vibration. So all of it for me comes down to vibration, and where vibration falls on a spectrum. We talked a little bit, in the retreat, about how, everything everything that we perceive as sound, including light, including radiation, all of those things live on the same spectrum of vibration. So it's really, we have different names for it. We kind of cut it up into these little slices, you know, and even like the wireless spectrum, you know, and like our phones and our Wi-Fi and all of that technology lives in certain spectrums, and all of it. And so we can only perceive certain parts of it, but other animals, other relatives of ours perceive other parts of it. And there's probably other beings that can perceive much more than we can, more than likely. It's pretty narrow what we perceive. Mm-hmm. So it's really fascinating to me. It's like connecting to, where does spirit live on that spectrum? You know, kind of asking that question and exploring that. Like, I don't have the answer, but it's like, I feel like it lives somewhere there. And if we talk to quantum physicists, you know, they're going to talk about how, wow, this universe, in fact, there's a way to measure it and look at it in a way that shows us, you know, it's actually made up mostly of space. And that space and what is there are these 11 dimensions of dancing strings, which always touches my heart. They're like, wow, they're not static. They're not fixed. And they don't even say that they're like moving strings. No, they're dancing strings. And I think that's pretty profound. You know, the invitation of what at the very fundamental level of the very fabric of time, space, and everything in between is this dancing medium that's vibrating. And it's vibrating all of this along this spectrum. And so spirit for me is that vibrational dance. And so ultimately for me, it's like when I tune into my spiritual path, and what is that about? It's about, for me, cultivating my awareness and my sensitivity to vibration, and how I create ripples in space-time, how I move into space, how I, you know, come into a place and create a positive ripple versus a negative one. If I come in really intense and really upset or really triggered, like how to really be sensitive and mindful of that, and like track that within myself, so that I'm able to create more beauty, you know? And that's an ongoing meditation and journey. It's not like it's, you know, I'm the guru.
Do you feel like if you're not in a good space, will you just not manifest from that place? Or how do you navigate when you're not in a good space and you just actually can't create more beauty in that moment? What will you do?
It's a good question. I think it's a case by case kind of thing, you know. Yeah. Here's a great example. This morning I was feeling really done, like super taxed out, and like, you know, they were like, oh, you got to do this photo shoot, and I'm like, at 7:30 in the morning, you know, down on the creek, like you stand in the water, and I'm like, I really don't want to do that right now. Like my body was like not feeling it, and I was really feeling shut down around it, and I could feel myself kind of just like I wasn't gonna transmit any light into these pictures because I'm not feeling it, you know. And so fortunately, you know, they were trying to cheer me up and like, and like say things to me, and I was like, I'm not feeling it. And so I was able, what I did was I just took a moment. I walked over to one of the trees down there, and I just kind of sat with the tree and kind of put my head to the tree and my hands on the tree, my feet on the earth, you know, and took off my shoes, and just took a moment to breathe and like connect to the tree, connect to like, you know, what is the importance of this? What is really important? You know, what isn't really important to transmit right now? And if we're going to capture this light, again, capturing this frequency into this other medium, you know, of film or digital ones and zeros, you know, on a memory card. So it's like, how can I emanate that light? So I asked that tree for the energy from it to help me like recenter myself, and felt into its roots and the groundedness of its stability, you know, its solidness. And that like breathing that into my being, it like helped me to get out of the funk, you know? But I had to have the wherewithal to go do that, because if I would have just stayed there and tried to like force it, you know, it was a waste anyways. I should have gone back to bed.
Yeah.
You know?
And maybe even with the fatigue, by the way, he just ran a 4.5-day retreat with 20 people and played music all day, every day, right? So the fatigue is warranted, but what if even with that fatigue, there's still that beauty of like the full encapsulation, right? Of who you are, or the moment, which is, yeah, there's light, there's love, but I'm also really fucking tired right now.
Yeah.
And it's, I feel like a lot of people, including myself, we shut down, or we assume that we're not going to show up in a good way if we're tired, if we're not feeling well. But somehow in those moments when we're really vulnerable, other people see the whole package.
Sure.
Other people don't see just
we don't
the
think
fatigue,
they do, but
right?
they see the whole
thing. They see the whole package, you
Yeah.
know? Some not even enlightened beings, you know, see the whole package.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, that's awesome that went on for you this morning.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's an ongoing journey, you know, and I think it's, like I said, it's case by case. Like there's sometimes when I can't get out of the funk, and then it's like, it can go south real fast, you know, downward spiral, get really upset, get triggered, all of that. So I think one of the things I find, you know, for what it's worth, is doing my best to keep myself resourced. And when I say resourced, I mean, you know, making sure, am I drinking enough water? You know, am I sleeping? And that's hard to do as a touring musician. It's just the nature of the gig is that, you know, you're up late. And when everyone else leaves at the end of the night, you still got to strike and you got to like tear down everything and go back to some hotel, you know, or somebody's, you know, some place that not your bed, not your home, you know, and then you got to get up the next day and go and drive somewhere else, you know, hours away and do it again. And so it's easy to not get resourced. So it's like, how do I keep myself resourced? How do I make sure I'm eating good food? How do I make sure I'm taking care of the vessel, you know, with the instrument, as we talked about this week, you know, because this is the instrument. It's the primary instrument, you know, where the breath is spirit, right? We are inspired by the breath. It enters into the body, inspirare. And that breath then invigorates and enlives this heap of flesh and bone and, you know, minerals and water and what have you, and then brings this to life. And then it's about, how do I take care of this instrument? How do I tune it? How do I maintain it, you know? Just like you wouldn't leave your Stradivarius violin out in the sun, you know, in the desert in a hot car, because it's going to split and fall apart. It's like, how do we take care of that for the long run? Because these meat suits we only got for so long, and they got to last us quite a trajectory. You know, if we want to really move in the world, I feel like it's about honing that and like taking good care of that. Yeah. And yeah, so that the vibration that we emanate can be of something of beauty.
Yeah. What are your most powerful tools when you're in funks, or in general? That obviously music, but
it's my biggest tool.
So if you're in a funk, you just get in nature and play an instrument and feel yourself get aligned.
Yeah, I mean, that's ideal, right?
Yeah.
Because like I'm not always access to nature, right? And maybe some of us out there, you live in a big city, like you know, we're on the road. We're in cities, you know, you're in the middle of LA or New York or London or Paris or whatever, right? It's like intense, like humanity. So how do you do it in those places, right? I think, yes, to nature. If you have access, that's why I choose to live in Sedona, you know? It's like having a place where I can, when I come off the road, I can recharge myself is really huge. But yeah, as far as when you're in those places, what are other tools that I have, you know? Combination of things, you know? Breath is probably my biggest tool, because it's always with me. Even more primal and immediate. The immediacy of it is even greater than, say, an instrument, you know. Because I talked about in the retreat, you know, the didgeridoo is an amazing teacher. One of my greatest teachers for breath work and teaching me how to breathe. And I love, like, if I'm in a funk, if I start playing the didge, within a minute to 3 minutes, totally shifted my whole consciousness. Is like, period. There's like, I'm in a totally different place. As if I had done, for me, like an hour of meditating and sitting in Vipassana meditation, I can access that space right away with just like 3 minutes of didge. Because it's like breath work. It's like, it takes you right into that diaphragmatic breathing. And that is priceless. So that's the big one. So when I don't have the didge and you're just like walking around, you know, you're in the city, or here's a great example, LA traffic. Gotta love LA traffic, you know what I mean? Or traffic in whatever major city, you know? It's like when you're moving through that and there's such an intensity and people are coming at you and like, you know, people are being very like inhospitable, you know, and not so gracious. It's like, that's a big one where it's like, and let's say you're late to a gig. That's classic scenario, right? Late to the gig, you got to get to the load in because the sound check, you only have this little window. So you have all the pressure of that, you know, you're driving and then there's traffic jam and then people are being super obnoxious, right? So I find that taking 6 deep diaphragmatic breaths, just 6 breaths. So you sit up, you know, you're in that car, you know, whatever it is, right? And you just in through the nose and exhale at the mouth. And really, really allowing on that exhale your shoulders to drop. You know, if you're wearing them like earrings, just let them really drop. 2, 3, all the way in, exhale all the way out. Breathing into any place of tension, tightness. And visualize like a jug of water, you're filling up from the bottom all the way to the top. Let it sound out. And just like shake it off. And right there's something about that 6th breath that like, I'm in a different space. It's just enough. It's like there's something about that threshold. You know, and obviously do more if you can, but I find 6 is kind of like the minimum. that'll really reset me. Because if I just take one breath, it's not quite enough. Something about 6 of those deep, long, each one is successively longer and deeper. And you oxygenate your body. Suddenly I get this headroom. If you know, by headroom, I'm talking like in like music speak, you know, it's like, and also just like, think of it as like your bandwidth, like I talk about in computer speak, you know, it's like you suddenly I have more bandwidth, I can handle the situation and not be so triggered. Suddenly I'm resourced, I have my center again. And when I'm in my center, then it's like nothing can take me out of that. And we talked a little bit about this, you know, during the retreat, this concept of entrainment. And entrainment is this amazing force, you know, of nature that we can observe in nature, you know, where crickets that are, you know, cricketing and chirping in different places, they'll suddenly go into sync, or women who are on their moon cycle, their menstrual cycle, will literally come into the same phase of their cycle and have their moon cycle together just by being in proximity. Same token, you know, you go into like a club or something, you know, and it's playing music at this certain BPM, you know, no matter where you're at, as you're in that space, in being bombarded by that sound and that frequency, your heart rate will entrain to that frequency, and it'll start to create more frenetic energy. And the converse is true. If you're frenetic and you come around to something that's really calming, someone who just got done meditating, and you're in their field and they're just anchored in that, it's like you naturally start to like soften. And so it's a powerful force. And there's many, many examples in nature. It's not just human examples, which I recommend people check out, but this concept of entrainment. So as you can create that headroom, that bandwidth through your breath is a very simple tool. It can really help you to come back into a place where you're able to confront the uncertainty of life. And for me, I think that's one of the greatest teachings I've ever had. And one of the things that I find is like, it's all about facing the uncertainty of life, because the one thing we know for certain is nothing's for certain in life. Life is all about throwing you those curveballs, you know, and those mealuas, as they say in capoeira, you know. And so like, are you going to know how to respond to that and get out of the way, you know, and turn that fall into a cartwheel, into a nau, you know, and transform that mistake into a moment of genius. You know, you play that wrong note, but it's the next note that really will determine what that note, if it was wrong or not, because you can change your next moment.
That was one of the loudest, most powerful lessons for me this retreat, is seeing how your energy, you're never getting caught on behind. And it's not just in your music, which I was very, very conscious of how you were training us to like, not even say, oh, I fucked up. Oh shit. Like, no, just move forward, drop all that. And what I see you do in life is, from the limited time I've known you and been in your presence, is like, you're always moving forward. I never see you getting caught in something behind you. And that goes for so many different things. I feel like in life there's so many I'm hearing an echo. Do you hear that?
It's from the roof here.
There's so many like cerebral hang-ups, you know, of like getting caught in something. The ego wants to get caught in something or stay behind while the next moment is coming. And I see that you're not getting hooked on anything, and you're just like forward, swimming, dancing forward. And the one thing I noticed about you as well, did you do capoeira when you were younger?
Yeah.
That's interesting, because, you know, I train in this school called the Clair Vision School, which is it's about reading energy, it's about energy, whatever.
Yeah.
And we tune into people's bellies. We tune into different centers of the body, the belly, the heart, the mind, and everything. And when I feel in your belly is like you're dancing with yourself all the time. Like just as you're going about your day, it's like you're dancing, you know? And I think I have more of like a jiu-jitsu belly. I was a jiu-jitsu fighter for 5.5 years. And I you know, so different martial arts have different chiseled different pathways in the belly, you know? And one thing I'm pulling from you from this retreat is like just being in that dance, that flow, and just, and Sydney's really good at that too.
Yeah.
And I'm not so good at that. I'm always stuck on something, grasping on something, you know?
Grappling with it.
Yeah, holding it. Trying to choke it out.
Yeah. It'll give up. It's tap out.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah.
No. That's one of the things I love about capoeira. You know, it for me, you know, it's a Afro-Brazilian, you know, for those who don't know, Afro-Brazilian martial art. And so it brings that African nature, but there's also this unique thing that came in the way that it arose out of slavery in Brazil, and as a form of resistance to oppression. And so it had to disguise itself. So it's a martial art that wasn't explicitly a martial art. It was disguised within a dance form. And so it's actually quite beautiful, because the nature of it being in a dance, there's this conversation. It's not just like the goal isn't just to take out the other person. It's actually like to create beauty with them, to actually make something beautiful, and at the same time show that you could have taken them out, but you didn't. And there's something really powerful with the symbolic taking out of someone versus actually doing it.
Yes.
Because you show them, but you don't do it. And so by showing them, though, hey, check this out. Oh, wait, you didn't see that. What about this? Oh, and it's like they lose their center without even ever laying a finger on them. And that's so much more powerful than if you just knock them out and there's blood and then game over. It's like there's no fun in that. So there's like this element of fun and play that is lost in martial arts. It just gets so there's like competitive and like cutthroat.
Yeah.
So the competition's there, but there's also a play performance element, which is there a little bit in other martial arts, but it's pretty much like go take them out. Who's going to get taken out first? And so I just think that's one of the aspects that makes capoeira so interesting, and I feel really informs us on how we can move through the world, as a metaphor for life, because life is always throwing you all kinds of interesting things. So it's like Aikido, it's like how do you redirect the energy as opposed to taking the brunt of it, and as opposed to like game over? How do we actually turn that attack into a defense, into a counterattack, and then it's like it becomes this spiral, just like the way life comes at us. You might say it's attacking you, but I kind of like to say it's asking you a question. So there's the question. So what's your answer to the question? Sometimes we don't have time to be in our minds about it, and that's the power. Is that as you train that kind of a martial art, that dance form, in any dance form, it's like in music, as we've been doing this whole week. It's this question. It's like there's this conversation happening when more than one person is there, and it's asking us, and maybe if we're just alone, spirit, the unseen, the unplayed note is asking us a question. Like the environment, the birds, like they're asking us. And so it's like, how do I want to respond? How do I want to show up in this moment? And that's, I add the layer of, and how can I do it beautifully? How can I bring grace into the transitional moments, of life, and bring grace into like when something goes awry. It's not like if it's going to go awry. It's like when it goes awry, because things always go, south on us inevitably. How do we turn that into a beautiful transition to the next chapter, into the next song, to the next moment of our life? If a relationship falls apart, how can I go back there and clean up my mess, and plant some roses there, plant some flowers there, and turn that into a deep lesson that then can inform me as I move into the next phase of my life now, the new season. If that relationship has to end, how can that be done in the most gracious way possible? So that then that informs me when I come into a new relationship, I've learned something. I'm enriched by it, and so is the other. I feel like if we can live in that way, if all of us do the best we can to do that, and it's not that we're going to do it perfectly, but if we can just keep moving forward in that way, we're going to create more beauty than not. Yeah. And the whole world is going to benefit.
Yeah, and that reminds me of something I learned about a few months ago, which is like, there's so many different people that we meet along our path, right? And each one of those people have different thoughts about us. Imagine how many vibrations are coming to us at a given moment from all the people that we've impacted around the world, and how that could affect us, right? Totally. So if we don't have integrity, or if we're leaving things, like my masculine energy wants to just destroy things, and sometimes, and if I don't like put the roses on, or if I don't make it more beautiful than it was, what's coming at me now as I move forward in my life from that individual, from that person, from that situation, So I'm totally on board with that, just going through life and always sealing the holes, sealing all the holes of integrity, making everything more beautiful. I never related it that way internally, but I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, the result, if you kind of zoom out, right, the result is that you move through life leaving a path of beauty behind you as opposed to a path of destruction. Because inevitably someone else is going to intersect with that path, or many people are going to intersect with that path, 6 degrees of separation. And inevitably that's going to ripple out forward in front of you, whatever trajectory you're on. And so if you're creating beauty behind you, you're actually also creating beauty in front of you. And so by the very nature of how all things are interwoven as a web, if you can, be present to that, you're creating beauty then, such that your life then will start to just have beauty in front of it as well. And then you're just like beauty in front, beauty behind. The Navajo talk about this. They call Hojoni. This is the beauty way. And that's the whole concept of that, is how do we create beauty, in this world? And if we do that, if we tend to that, little by little. It doesn't have to be big acts. It's nothing too fancy. It's like, make your bed. Be kind to your partner. Be kind to your relatives. Just a little gesture of kindness goes so far. When you're on the road, let that person come out in front of you instead of being like, I'm in a rush. I'm going to step on the gas. Just taking that, it goes so far. That person then has a different feeling of generosity because you were generous to them, and then they're going to be generous to someone else. And it's just like, that just creates this positive ripple and it becomes a wave. And then next thing you know, you're on the surfboard riding this wave.
It's all coming back to you.
Yeah, because it all comes back.
What about in because New Age spirituality, one of my things I have a qualm with, it's like, all right, so peace and love to all beings, there's like beauty, and I get it, right? But what about in situations where boundaries are needed? What about in situations where your beauty is not received and someone is just completely unreasonable? Because what I feel from you is I also feel like you're strong boundaries, even with all of your beauty, your spine protects your heart. So how do you integrate that? Whereas most people in the spiritual communities are just like, all heart or peace and love. But I find that when I'm in that space, like it does, it's not sustainable for me. Something like,
how so? Like what?
I feel like I get hurt, or I can't like navigate through in my way that I really want to.
I see.
I don't know.
If I'm hearing you, it's like I want to make a distinction because I feel like there's one thing is to, and I see this happen also in for lack of a better word, the New Age communities. I say the Now Age. I mean, I think what I mean, because New Age gets there's kind of a stereotype, right, that it can get very ungrounded. I would like to say, distinction of like there's an ungrounded presence, a very like, and some people say, oh, it's very woo-woo, that's very out there, that's very esoteric, that's very kind of up in the clouds. That's not real. And I feel fundamentally we have to be grounded and rooted, no matter who we are. I feel like it's the path to go high is actually to go down and to root ourselves into the earth, root ourselves into our core, in our roots. How connected are we to our true power, and to our dantian, and to our, we talked about, like this point here, like our guiding force, our gut, our intuition, our inner authority. And it allows us to be an author, it allows us to be a creator. Because then when we're connected here to our center, again with that breath, then we're rooted and we're grounded. And then when we go into those esoteric realms, when we do medicine work, when we go into these realms where we're astral projecting, when we're moving out into the world in these ways, we have a tether, we have a grounding cord. So
the low and down.
Yeah. So as I was saying, so by being rooted, connected and grounded, then we're able to go into those higher realms, into those kind of esoteric spaces, and I feel what I see often without losing ourselves is what I'm trying to say. And what I see happen so common, and I feel is a fair criticism of kind of more New Age practices or Now Age, like the things we see out there that are kind of a consciousness, and people who say, oh, I'm awoke, and waking up. It's not to be undervalued, and there's a place where it can get a little trite, a little like misplaced, because I feel that it's ungrounded, and I feel that that's where there is a reflection there, and I think not to be critical of it, but rather to hold it accountable. There's an accountability that's necessary, because the goal here is to be grounded, embodied, and this is my opinion, is to be grounded, embodied human beings that are fully connected to our body, and to the boundary of our body and what our body's needs are, what our health is, what it means to be a whole human, not dependent on another, not dependent on things external, but cultivating wholeness within ourselves. Not as like a catch word and as like a trademark word, Whole Foods, kind of thing, when it's really they're selling you another corporate lie. No, what does it mean to really live in wholeness? And it's not like it's done. It's an ongoing, like waking up. Like, it's so funny, people are like, awoke, you're so woke, man. Yeah. It's like, no, man, this is an ongoing, because human beings, we're forgetful as fuck. We're very forgetful beings. By our nature, we forget. The moment I share something and drop something that comes through from source, I've forgotten it. And I gotta go back and I gotta remember it. So in fact, for me, waking up is a constant journey, a path, a dance, a song of remembering. And as we remember, we get our pieces, our power, the things that we forget along the way. We're like, oh yeah, that piece. bring that back. Oh, there's my heart. I was in my aggro, violent, raging masculine just now, and I got to remember what it means to be balanced and grounded and in integrity and honoring the feminine, including the feminine within myself. And so it's a remembering, it's a reconstituting, it's a recognizing. Recognize that I forgot, and the moment I can recognize it, then I can name it. No longer is it then my blind spot and it pulling my power. And so in that way, to tie it back into your question, it's like, I feel it's very important, and I feel the healthy expression of the healthy masculine, which is all I can speak from as a man in this lifetime, is learning how to constantly remember and recognize and reassemble myself and honor the feminine within myself. And the feminine is what? The yin aspect. The yin, what does that mean? That is the receptive, intuitive, psychic part of me. That is the part of me that can listen so deeply and can empty myself so that I can receive the intelligence, the wisdom in the unseen. I can receive the intelligence in the space between the notes. Rather than being so focused on making the note, I can actually hear. And once I can hear, that guidance is actually the real, I feel like that's the piece that connects me to source and that guides me. And it's not some woo-woo thing. It's just shut up and listen.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need boundaries around that, right? And so the boundaries, like we're talking about, you're saying like the boundaries, you feel like wounded. So how can I show up and be vulnerable and be authentic and not also be, that doesn't mean weak. They're different. I can be strong in my vulnerability. I can be strong in my authenticity, and I can do so in a way of being yin and being receptive. And that's that feminine element. I can open myself up and really allow myself to be able to receive and have empathy. And empathy is a powerful force that is way undervalued and way underrated. And I feel, technology is a real interesting thing, because the way technology kind of plays out now in today's society is that it kind of undermines our empathy, because it creates like this division, this separation. It's like we're more connected than we've ever been with our social media and all these channels, but at the same time we're more alienated than ever. And so we've lost empathy. So I'm always looking for, how can I use technology to build empathy? How can I use tech? And this is a subject that I've presented on, and we've talked about, and at South by Southwest, that's a whole conference is around. How do we use tech to bring empathy versus remove it? Because it can be so there's just another face. It's just another whatever social profile. It's a robot. It's not even a real human. It's some bot out there doing this thing. And so we get almost apathetic and, indifferent. And that is the most insidious thing, because once we
jealousy, which is even worse, which is that to the next level, right? Going somewhere with it instead of apathetic.
Well, jealousy, at least you still care enough that you're feeling this emotion of jealousy, right?
I see what you're saying.
Apathy is the worst, because apathy is you're indifferent.
You're dead.
You're dead. You're flat. You could care less. Because the moment we could care less about ourselves or about another, it's the same as reflected in the world. And then all of a sudden, then we don't really care if people are being blown up on the other side of the planet by a drone. It's totally disconnected from us. Oh, that just has to happen. And then we can hold the mindset of someone like our president at present, this guy that we call our president, or people like him, of that mindset, for better or worse. Because I feel deep down, they wouldn't do that if they had empathy. They couldn't do that.
Right.
If I feel for that person on the other side of the planet, who's suffering, and I can put myself in their shoes for just a moment and connect to that. And what is that like if I didn't have all these amazing first world luxuries that I have? When I can feel that empathy, it's that motivates me. That then moves me. It vibrates something in me that then calls me into service, calls me into action. How can I actually do something about that? How can I live my life in a different way that can actually make an impact for them? Because the truth is, humans, we're wired for empathy. Our hearts are all about being empathic. And to have empathy requires vulnerability. And so therein lies, I feel, the piece that is missing often, and that leads to us having the indifference and the alienation, the separation, disconnect from everything, from life itself, that then allows us to be totally violent, raging, destructive with our guns, with our explosives, wanting to just blow it and light it all up. The fuck it mentality. Just fuck it. And that's indifference. You hear it? You feel it. Oh, just fuck it. I don't give a fuck. Excuse my language, but that's the thing, and that's the unhealthy masculine. I feel that's definitely an aspect of when a masculine's out of balance. It's just, I'm just gonna fuck everything, and I don't give a fuck, right? That mentality, right? And it's so sad, because it's like the moment we go down that road, all is lost. And so, because at the core and underneath it, this is what's really trippy. Underneath it, we just want to feel the connection.
Yeah.
We really want the love and the vulnerability and the authentic connection. That's what we really want. So the fuck it mentality comes out of some little story that we had as little boys when we felt abandoned, when we felt we were all alone. And then we told ourselves, I'm all alone. There's only me, so fuck everything else. It's just about me. That little story that happened from some point of our wounding, of our inner boy, of our inner child. And this goes with girls too. I mean, that inner child is wounded. Then arose this armor to protect that inner child. And that armor said, that sword and that shield was basically like, fuck everything else. I'm going to slash my way through this. I'm going to destroy it because I got to protect this wound. But the wound was a lie, because we're not alone. And we can't do this alone. It takes all of us showing up with our heart.
Yeah, that's another thing. Being here, you really present that team aspect. That we're all on the same team.
Yeah.
That's something I have a challenge with my competitive spirit, inside from jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
I forget that it's like, it's not a fucking competition in life,
Right.
But
right.
Yeah.
That's one of the beautiful things about music. I think about, like, when you think about a musician and what a musician's able to do with an audience, how their listeners, they can impact their audience, versus, say, an athlete, a super athlete who has all these fans and like super fans, who are same thing. It's very similar. Like, there's this aspect where an athlete can change and influence so many people with their power as an athlete. Same way, a musician let's just rolls right in. Yeah. We're recording all this. Yeah.
She wants to go. Right,
she's ready. Is that her subtle way of being like,
yeah, that is.
Done.
That's her.
Wrap it up, boys. Okay. So I'll let me finish this point, and we'll bring it to a close. We love you. So funny. So the same way that an athlete can really change the world, can impact things on a global scale, so can a musician. And they share a common thread in that. They have an immense amount of power. And it's a different power than a politician. Here's a great example. In the 70s, there was a war going on that both countries decided to stop so that they could go watch a soccer game. They were like, no, we're going to go watch this game. Pele was playing. And they were like, we got to go see. Yeah.
Is that where he tied his shoe for like $200,000 or something?
It's a crazy, crazy history when you look at back. And there's other examples of this where literally wars were stopped because of, these kind of things. Musicians have the same power to literally uprise in a rebellion and give like fuel to that, or to pacify people and like distract them from their woes. And so they'll just go ahead and keep putting up with the system that is. So there's immense power there. And they're not held by the same limitations as a politician, because it's coming from this authentic thing. People are moved by that because they know how real that is. They're not being lied to. Like, you either feel the music or you don't feel the music. You either feel the emotion and the charge of when, a team is like doing their thing and working as a concerted effort to transform and, win a game. But the subtle difference, which is a really powerful distinction, which we're bringing up when you talk about competition, is competition. Is that what happens when we have that competitive thing, is that there's this piece that is kind of like someone has to lose in the competition.
Right.
And so someone is then shamed or guilted. Someone is at a loss. Someone is shut down so that another can feel elevated. Whereas in music, it's not the case. We can all win in music. Everyone, even if you don't like a musical style, you know what I'm saying? There's certain styles that I like, others that I don't. But everyone in an audience, in a big show, for instance, you feel that. When an artist really has the ability to move a whole audience and transmit and be that channel for spirit to come through, we all feel it. And there's this collective lifting up. And it's inclusive. And as a whole, and a really powerful artist, they let the audience participate in that. It's not just them out just pushing energy out. There's a two-way exchange of energy. And when a really masterful artist can use that energy with the audience and feel them exchanging that, all of a sudden they take off. And when they go up, they take everyone with them. And there's nothing else like that. And so that's why I would, make this, the case that music is life. It is life. Because when you show up in music, and you're playing music from a place of, I'm playing music to enrich my life, to bring my best, to do my best, and to bring beauty, then all of your lineage, all of your ancestors, they're there backing you up. But when an artist, when a musician, when any of us show up in service to not just myself, but to everything, to enrich all life, to help others become and discover their music, then I've got everybody, all your backup is also showing up. All of life shows up, seen and unseen.
Form right now.
What's happening right now, And then it's unstoppable. And so when you can connect to that, when that fear comes up, which is inevitable, like we talked about, that judgment, that self-critic, the perfectionist, all those things, it's like, it's the mind, the ego that wants to get in the way and block the river from flowing through us. You can tap into that. Because when you come at it from that place of service and that humility that comes with service, because we're getting out of the way, going back to your earlier question, when we do that, then we realize it's so much greater than just us. We're just a conduit. We're just a hollow bone. And that's when real magic happens. Then the portal opens. And this isn't a woo-woo thing. Anybody out there, man, there's probably some music that you've heard at some point and you felt this. This is a feeling. It's not a mind thing. It's a heart thing. And you feel it in your body. Your body knows right away because the body doesn't lie. The mind will lie and trick us and make up stories, whatever. We can rationalize anything. Anything. We can make murder sound like a good idea. But when you feel, does it feel right? Where's your breath? Is your breath locked up or is it expansive? Are you able to really expand into that? So that's the medicine of music, and that's I feel like that's a good thing to be in service to.
Beautiful. You want to play the Dig for a few minutes?
Yeah.
As we wrap up and just talk about that?
Yeah,
I know that's your core magic right there.
Yeah, it's one of my teachers for sure. Yeah, so, the didgeridoo is an instrument that comes from the Aboriginal people of Australia, the oldest human beings that we know, on the planet. And it's a ceremonial, very sacred instrument to them. And I feel very blessed and very honored to play this one here from this desert. This one is made from agave. Which is the flower that comes out of the agave, in fact. And the agave flower, the agave plant only flowers once in its life. And it's pretty incredible. Its lifetime is between 35 to up to 75 years. So like a human lifetime. And so it waits its whole life looking like a mean little aloe vera plant. And then when the timing's right and the water's right and all the conditions are right, it does its kabloom into the world. And it shoots up this spiraling, beautiful flower. It looks like a giant asparagus. And then it blooms out, these beautiful blooms. And you'll see them here in the desert. And they'll be like yellows and reds and sapphires. And then it dies. And then after it dies, we go and we carefully harvest it. And take the flower, and we spread all the rest of the seeds that are remaining. And then we hollow it out from the inside. And you have this tube, And so it's this amazing thing. I get a chance to play a flower to you.
Wow.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. So may the flower blossom, your heart open, and this vibration, help us connect to the breath of life from source.
Can you play now?
Yeah.
All right, let's just check the audio. Go ahead. Beautiful, bro.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you got it.
So,
Such a treat. Glad
yeah,
we could
thank
do
you
this.
for this retreat, man. And I'll be at the next one. And anyone else who's interested in his work, you'll be running retreats and shows all around the world, and your albums, Spotify, Porangui, Porangui, the only Porangui in the world.
.com.
Anything else? Oh, I got one last question for you.
You got it.
What medicine would you have for my audience? Is a lot of, unfortunately, significant percentage of them are dealing with chronic illness.
Yeah.
Lyme, heavy metal poisoning, chronic fatigue, severe depression, severe anxiety, all kinds of very severe issues.
Yeah.
What kind of wisdom do you have? I know you passed to me about this breath on this retreat, which has been really powerful for me. Would that be the same message for all? Focus on the breath.
I mean, it's the easiest one. Doesn't require anything external. It's built in. I'd say tap into your breath. Work with your breath. There's a lot of things that I taught him. He can share with you guys, and then also please come see us, come work with us. We're going to be doing more retreats like this, and at least twice a year, plus other little like events throughout. Music is medicine, is what we call these, and we'll be helping people to open that up. So that's definitely part of my calling and why I'm on this planet, is to help others to tap into that. So breath is huge. Oxygenating the body, moving the stagnant energy out. It's a form of purging, as you found out, right? Cleansing. It's a whole other level of how the body is able to heal itself. And it is life itself. Without the breath, we're nothing. It's the first and last thing we'll ever do. So why not master it?
Beautiful.
Like that. One other thing I will give you though is tap into your music. What music are you listening to? What's your music? Like, create your own playlist. Like, create a playlist for healing, and challenge you all. Like, find music that really moves you and that taps into you. Not just like, pop music or whatever, although that's fine, but maybe find music that really lets you get into that place of restoration, of healing. Because if you're dealing with chronic illness, a lot of that comes from our environment. And so if we can generate a positive field around us of energy and frequency and vibration, we're going to then help the body to reorganize itself and to want to heal itself, because the body wants to heal. That's the trippy thing about chronic illness, because the body is always trying to strive for healing. That's why when we cut ourselves, eventually it will heal. How long that takes has to do with what is the energetic field? What is going on? What are we eating? What are we listening to? What kind of noises are in our environment? What other toxins are in our environment? So I just invite the listeners out there and the viewers is to really tap into that. Find music, because music is such medicine. Find music that helps you do that, and then create your own playlist and let that be a way that you're able to tap into that. And then if you can, invite you as you cultivate your breath with that, maybe find a playlist that helps you to breathe and start to make some sounds and move your vocal cords. Because as we breathe and start to actually not just in language and talking, but just using our breath and vibration, like and just moving that, even just a and like letting go, that already starts to unravel some of the stuff that I feel holds us in these chronic patterns and allows us to start to repatterning. So I hope that's helpful.
Aho.
Thank you.
Beautiful, brother.
Yeah, thanks, brother.
Thank you.